departure from the foregoing, he shall so state for the record, identifying the substance of the departure which he believes has occurred. This requires a roll call vote, Mr. Mayor.
All right. Councilman Hill.
So moved.
Second.
Councilman Wilson Smith, second. Madam Clerk, would you please call the roll?
Councilmember Cuthbert,
Aye.
Councilmember Wilson Smith,
Aye.
Councilmember Myers,
Aye.
Councilmember Hart. He's still muted. Is he there?
I actually heard him say aye if it counts.
Okay, thank you. Councilmember Hill,
Aye.
Vice Mayor Smith Lee,
Aye.
Mayor Perm.
Aye.
We're now back in open session.
All right. That concludes our special call closed session. Now we're ready to go to our regular special city council meeting. It is 12:19. We're ready to get started. April 20th, 2021, special city council meeting. Madam Clerk, could you please call the roll?
Councilmember Cuthbert,
Here.
Councilmember Wilson Smith,
Here.
Councilmember Myers,
Here.
Councilmember Hart. Do you say here again, Garrett?
Yes, he said here.
Okay, thank you. Councilmember Hill,
Here.
Vice Mayor Smith Lee,
Present.
Mayor Perm.
Here.
Thank you.
Next, we move on to item 2, the prayer. Councilman Hill will lead us in our opening prayer.
Let us pray. Eternal God, our fathers, once again, we come before you, Heavenly Father. First of all, thank you for all that many gifts and blessings you bestowed upon us. Now, Lord, we ask that you would bless this meeting, Heavenly Father, that it be fruitful to your name. Lord, we ask a special blessing upon our city and our citizens, Heavenly Father. We ask a special blessing upon our city council and our administration, all those employees who work for the city, the first responders, Heavenly Father. We ask that you bless and keep them. Lord, we ask a special blessing upon those who are in Minnesota, Heavenly Father, that you will have your justice done the way that you will want it to be done, Heavenly Father. We ask that you will quiet our nation, Heavenly Father, over all this unrest, Heavenly Father. We ask that you be with us, guide us, and strengthen us, Heavenly Father. We thank you for this day. It's in your name we do pray and we thank you. Amen.
Amen. Next, can you please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag
Of the United States of America.
and to the
To the
republic
republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Next is item 4, determination of the presence of a quorum. We do have a quorum. Next, item 5, proclamations, recognitions, presentations of ceremonial proclamations. Item 5A, a proclamation to proclaim April 30th, 2021 as Arbor Day in the city of Petersburg. Whereas in 1872, J. Sterling Morton proposed to the Nebraska Board of Agriculture that a special day be set aside for the planting of trees. And whereas the holiday called Arbor Day was first observed with the planting of more than 1 million trees in Nebraska and is now observed throughout the United States and the world. And whereas trees can reduce the erosion of our precious topsoil by wind and water, lower our heating and cooling costs, moderate the temperature, cool the heat island effect of urban areas, clean the air, produce oxygen, and provide habitat for the wildlife. And whereas trees are a renewable resource and the main component of paper, wood for our homes, fuel for our fires, and countless other essential products, and in the city of Petersburg, increase property values, enhance the economic vitality of business areas, and beautify our community. And whereas trees enhance the quality of life in our community by providing shade for residents, using active transportation, including pedestrian bike riders, children walking to the school. And whereas urban forestry management, the right tree selection, proper planting techniques, appropriate location, and continued maintenance are important and enhance the health and extend the life of all trees. And whereas trees, wherever they are planted, are a source of joy and renewal. Now, therefore, I, Mayor Sam Pam, by virtue of authority vested in me as mayor of the city of Petersburg, do hereby proclaim April 30th, 2021 as Arbor Day in the city of Petersburg and urge all citizens to celebrate Arbor Day and to support efforts to protect our trees and wetlands. Dated April 20th, 2001, signed by myself and the Clerk of Council, Ms. Nikesha Jackson. Next, we'll move on to item 6, responses to previous public information period. Ms. Kimmy?
Good afternoon, Mayor. Good afternoon, members of City
Afternoon.
Council. So for the previous public information questions, we had an inquiry into CARES funding update. There is a full PowerPoint presentation that is now online. It's available at petersburgva.gov, so that's .gov. It is under the Government tab, and then you will see City Council meeting presentations. It is available there. There's also a search function on the website. So if you just want to search CARES funding update, that should get you to the link as well. And we also had an issue from Ms. Hill. She was explaining her utility billing issue, and I have connected with her offline, and she and I have gotten that resolved. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Next, we move on to item 7, approval of the consent agenda to include minutes of previous meetings. Item A, City Council minutes of April 6, 2021, closed session meeting, April 6, 2021, City Council work session, April 6, 2021, special City Council afternoon meeting, and April 12, 2021, closed session meeting. I will entertain a motion to accept the consent agenda as stated.
So moved.
All right, we have a motion from Councilman Myers,
Second.
second from Councilman Hill. Madam Clerk, would you please call the roll?
Councilmember Cuthbert,
Aye.
Councilmember Wilson Smith,
Aye.
Councilmember Myers,
Aye.
Councilmember Hart,
Aye.
Councilmember Hill,
Aye.
Vice Mayor Smith Lee,
Aye.
Mayor Pern.
Aye.
Motion's passed.
Next is item 8A, official public hearings. Item A, a public hearing in consideration of adoption of an ordinance to amend and readopt Chapter 2 of Section 2-1 through 2-571 of the Petersburg City Code in furtherance of the city's comprehensive code update. Mr. Williams.
Yes, sir, Mr. Mayor. This is in follow-up to something that we started at the end of last year. As you know, I was going to attempt to every month bring council a section of the city code so that we can get it up to date, ensure that everything in there is accurate, and basically do an entire comprehensive review of the entire city code. We've already taken care of Chapter 1. I'm a little bit behind. I had hoped to get this to you earlier in the year. Actually, I had hoped to get it to you by February, so I'm a little bit behind because I'm only on Chapter 2 now. But this is basically the current version of Chapter 2 in the city code, asking council to recertify that this is accurate, and then we will have it updated with our Municode, and we'll move on to Chapter 3. This one, there were no changes, actually. It is the administrative portion, and so it should be up to date if council approves it.
Wait a minute.
Councilman Wilson Smith.
Sorry. I'm over here having a conversation with me, myself, and I. I do have some questions about this, Mr. Williams. And
Okay.
I'm trying to find the exact page. Is it time
Okay.
for me to ask
You know
questions?
what? I'm going to open the floor for the public hearing first, then we'll have to do questions from members of council.
Thank you.
Okay. All right, now the floor is open for the public hearing in consideration of adoption of the ordinance to amend and readopt Chapter 2, Section 2-1 through 2-571 of the Petersburg City Code in furtherance of the city's comprehensive code update. If anyone wants to speak on the comprehensive code, please raise your hand in the chat and you will be recognized. Garrett, do you see any hands?
I do not, Mr. Mayor.
Okay. Seeing no hands, I'm going to close the public hearing and go back to Councilwoman Wilson Smith.
Thank
What's
you. Thank you. I have found my questions. I'm thinking about the accuracy of this document, and of course,
perhaps some of the things are not as I think they should be, but I have to ask the question. On page 105, the section about the farmer's market, it appears to be talking about the old farmer's market. Do we want to leave that like that? It says, page 105, City Market, Article 8, City Market. Well, thank you for pulling that up. The provisions of this article shall apply to the public marketplace referred to in section 2-543, and the purposes of this article, the word market shall mean, that's not the part I'm talking about. Okay, section 2-543, location. The building situated at the eastern end of Old Street that is used as a public marketplace shall continue to be kept by the city for that purpose. Now, does that building refer to the old farmer's market, or what we used to call the farmer's market? And if it does, why do we want to leave this in here?
Yeah, that's the current language that is in the city code, and it looks like that particular provision was originally adopted in 1981 and was not changed since. So it probably is talking about the old farmers market. Certainly could update that now if you choose to, or we could have that particular section brought back to update it. But yeah, if you have language that should be amended to, certainly offer it as an amendment right here on the floor, and we could fix it right now if that's what you'd like to do.
Well, what I'd like to do is understand what we're doing. If we're voting on this, according to what you're saying, we're voting to adopt what you're presenting.
So what happened over the course of years since 1981, the code has not been comprehensively updated since then, is that council had adopted certain ordinances that never found its way into the city code. And so there are big gaps, and then council would thereafter adopt another code section on top of that one. So the prior revision was never incorporated. So the only way to make sure that you have a comprehensive code that is current, in other words, what council has adopted, is to go back and recertify this is what the baseline is. This is what our code is. So what I do is I go back and pull what is currently online in Municode, and then have my paralegal go back and research each of those sections to see, was there a revision to that section, and go as far back as she can. She may go back 10 years, she may go back further than that. And if there was a revision, then you'll see that in what you're certifying. So what I'm telling you with that section is there did not appear to be a revision that has occurred by council since it was adopted in 81. And so if you would like to change that now, you can. I would suggest that, if you don't have language right now that you want to change it to, then just say, bring that section back to us and have it updated, and we could do that. But I think what we want to do is get each section certified as a baseline so we can move forward and have a code that it reflects exactly what council has intended for it to reflect.
Then, since there are several things within the document that you have given us, for instance, page 52, it talks about fee for passing bad checks. Is that at $20 in this city?
It's whatever is reflected in that code section.
Okay. I have questions about page 48 with duties of sanitations, page 47, duties of city attorney, page 49, boards and commissions. So then I guess my overall thing is, should council agree to vote on this today with so many things needing to be looked at a little more carefully?
I guess what I would suggest is that there are over 30 chapters of the city code. So, and this one in particular is not changed. There aren't any changes from what is currently reflected in Municode. just asking council to certify, hey, what we have online is what we're supposed to have. If there are changes that you want to make, then certainly identify those changes and they can be made. I would recommend pulling those items, because if we do this for each one, I will no longer be living by the time we get to the 30th chapter, because this is chapter 2.
Okay. Okay. I would recommend that we not vote on it at all, and that there is a better review of what's in here, so that when we do vote on it, it's we can have a choice between leaving what's in here or putting something new or up to date or truthful in here.
Is it, question for Mr. Williams, is it pretty common for localities to have these the old codes from back in 81 still in their current revised code, comprehensive code?
It can
Oh.
happen. It's not unusual in some instances, but in order to, I guess, to move it forward, this process helps with that, identifying those. But what I would suggest is if those items are of concern, like the one that she pointed out with regard to the farmers market, I would recommend that council adopt what's in front of them with direction to bring that specific section back updated. That way you've got a baseline and you know exactly what you're fixing, as opposed to saying, well, let's just not adopt the whole thing, because if you do that, then you're never going to get this moving forward. They're so large that you're never going to get to the end.
Okay, so what we're looking at now is just adding what hasn't been updated recently.
Yeah, I would say right, and that's all we're doing, is we're taking what's currently published online and then going back through council minutes, trying to find if there were any revisions that have not been incorporated that should have been. Because every time you adopted an ordinance, it should have showed up in Municode. It should have been forwarded to them. They should have published it, and it hasn't been. And so the whole idea is we want to say, let's start all over. Let's start fresh, get council to adopt each one of these sections as it currently exists or as we can find the updates, and then move forward with a comprehensive code that has been currently adopted by council. And so if we go through each line and say, well, I don't like that one, I don't like that one, I don't like that one. If you've ever looked at the city code, it's about this thick. So it's a lot of pages.
Right. Another question, Councilman Wilson Smith?
No, I've read the entire chapter 2. I've gone through all of it. It's not a matter of not liking it or not caring for the language. The item I pointed out is just not true, which makes it difficult for me to vote in support of accepting what is written. I understand everything Mr. Williams is saying, but if it's being presented to us to amend and re-adopt that particular part of it and direct the city manager and city attorney to take all necessary action to ensure that said provisions are updated in the city's published city code through the city's publisher. I can't see this happening at this point. So those are my concerns. There are several things within this document I think we all just need to look at and see if we're satisfied with it. I made several notes about things within the document that I just think the section page 49, boards and commissions, really tells us nothing. So I would rather see us not adopt it, but I'm fine.
Okay, Councilman Cutler?
I think we ought to keep the process moving. As our city attorney has said, it's really a pretty daunting task he's taken on. He voluntarily, and I was very grateful to him for agreeing to take it on And I believe what I've heard is that the city attorney is suggesting that we certify the ordinance chapter that's in front of us as accurate and move to the next agenda item. And if I understand Ms. Wilson Smith's concern, and I think we all share it, but I see that as a separate issue. I'm not sure how or when best to address it, but I don't think we ought to slow this process down of certification of accuracy in order to fine tune to our present reality every provision that's in the existing ordinance. Mr. City Attorney, tell us how you think we ought to proceed here.
Yes, I would recommend, and that's what you said is exactly right. You're certifying that this is the current code, not that this contains every item in there as council thinks it should be. Just certifying, yes, we believe that that is the current state of the code. And so if there are items, as Councilwoman Wilson Smith has identified, what I would suggest is that after council adopts this, council adopts the ordinance saying, yes, this is the current state of the code, she send those to me or send those to the city manager. And those items can be directed to the appropriate department head to bring forth an update. Say, if she thinks that section 2-176 needs to be updated, can flag it, that can be sent to the appropriate department head or to me if it's entirely legal, and that item will come back in front of you in the form of an ordinance. But at least that way we move on from chapter 2 to chapter 3, because if we were to go back with each chapter and go line by line, page by page and say, well, this one hasn't been a change, but it should have been years ago, we could spend a tremendous amount of time and never get through the entire city code. I'm not trying to bring the code up to where we want it to be. I'm trying to bring it up to where we all agree that's where it is. That is the current state of the code. That's the only thing I'm presenting to you.
The current state.
Yes, Councilman Cutler?
Well, I move the council hereby certifies the city code chapter that's before us as an accurate statement of the city code chapter as it now exists.
Okay, we have a motion for Councilman Cuthbert,
Second.
second by Councilman Hill. Any discussion on the motion?
Discussion, when we find that there's something that's not to our liking, we basically can just forward it to the appropriate to the city manager or either the city attorney, and then they'll bring it back to us. I'm hearing that correctly, right?
Yes, sir.
Yes.
If you just do it by email, send it to both the manager and I, and we should be able to get it back in front of you guys and have that particular section updated. As Councilwoman Wilson Smith was asking about the farmer's market, I agree. That can simply come back as a separate item at some point and be updated separately.
Okay, thank you. Just for clarification. Thank you.
Question?
Question, Councilman Wilson Smith?
So the motion said accurate. We're voting on this as an accurate document as it currently is, but it's not.
No, I think the motion is, I know he said accurate, but it said the recommendation is to adopt the ordinance. So Mr. Coupler, if you can take out the word accurate and just adopt the ordinance as it is, I think we can get Ms. Wilson Smith on board. Mr. Coupler?
No, I understand. I don't, the question is it an accurate statement of the ordinance as this ordinance now exists?
But that's not,
That's what I intended the motion to say, and I think that's a true statement. Is it an accurate statement of the world in which we live? No.
okay. The recommendation is to adopt the ordinance. You added the word accurate in there, so that's the recommendation.
Well, let's,
Oh, but don't we want to be,
Ms. Jackson,
Councilman Cutler?
could Ms. Jackson read the motion? Would Ms. Jackson read the motion back? Because I didn't.
All I have is that you're approving the ordinance
Write
because
it out.
your microphone has you kind of
Awful.
skipping. Yeah, even when you made your motion, it skipped.
Your Wi-Fi is messing up.
Yeah,
Yeah.
you have a
So
lag.
it's
Oh, okay.
lagging.
All right, well, let me do a better
better.
Wi-Fi position. Let me put this thing on.
You sound better right now.
Oh, okay. Well, good. Well, I can't explain all this. I'm sorry. All right, so,
Mr. Williams, help us with this motion so that it says what you articulated, and it does not vouch for this ordinance being describing the way we want it to be. Instead, it describes the way it is.
Yeah, I think if council simply adopts the ordinance, that would suffice. You know, like again, I think we're splitting hairs on the, you know, whether it is accurate. You're saying it's accurate as it currently sits today. I agree with that. I think what Councilwoman Wilson Smith is saying, but it's not accurate as how it should be going forward. And those two things are really not relevant to the discussion, because all I'm hoping you'll do is adopt the ordinance, and then if further we need revisions, we'll have them brought back to you to revise the individual sections. And so, as Councilman Hill indicated, I think the easiest thing to do is just motion to adopt the ordinance and move forward.
right. All right, let me restate my motion then. It's going to be shorter than before, and it's not going to contain the word accurate. I move that council hereby adopts the ordinance as proposed.
All right. Councilman Cutler, Councilman Hill.
If you need to face the way that you was facing at first, okay?
Yeah, if you stand
Face to the
up
side,
and not
you
get
start
close to the computer screen, then it doesn't lag. Like where you're at perfectly now, when you were talking, we can hear you clear, but when you lean down and start talking, it starts lagging.
Yeah.
All right, well, shall I restate that motion?
I didn't
Oh,
hear
we-
it that time when you made the motion to approve the ordinance, so I got it that time clear. It
Okay.
lagged, but I can still understand it, and everybody else can.
All right, Councilman Hill.
Second.
All right, Councilman, as a second. All right, Madam Clerk, would you please call the roll?
Councilmember Cuthbert,
Aye.
Councilmember Wilson Smith,
No,
Councilmember Myers, did he disappear?
Yeah, he's out.
I hear it go.
Thank you. Councilmember Hart,
Aye.
Councilmember Hill, Vice Mayor Smith Lee.
Aye.
Mayor Kern,
Aye.
motion's passed.
All right, next we'll move on to item AB. Public hearing and consideration of adopting of an ordinance to request that the General Assembly approve amendment to section 2-7 of the city charter pertaining to council salaries. Mr. Williams?
Yes, sir. So this had been the topic of discussion a while back, and I think we had left it, but during the course of this comprehensive code review, I did come across this and mentioned it to the mayor, and thought it wouldn't be a bad idea to bring it back in front of council for your consideration. As you know, the city charter has a process in place for city council to proceed with providing raises for city council. It's a fairly elaborate process. It involves the court and a panel and a lot of other bells and whistles. However, the state code, which was adopted presumably after the charter provision was 15.2, 14, 14.6, describes the method by which localities are to provide their governing bodies with raises. And the interesting part about it, typically special legislation supersedes general legislation. So typically, if you have a provision in your city charter and it calls for something and state code generally calls for something else, the charter supersedes because the charter is special legislation. The state code is general legislation. The only time that does not apply is when the state code says the state code provision supersedes general or special legislation. Because if the state code says that it supersedes special legislation, then the state code supersedes the charter. And in this case, that's exactly what you have. In 15.2, 14, 14.6, it says, notwithstanding any contrary provision of law, general or special. So what that means, that's great. Thank you, Nikesha. Second line of that code section, see right there, it says, notwithstanding any contrary provision of law, general or special. So that says, doesn't matter what you have in your charter, this state code provision is the process that you follow when you provide raises for your governing body. And so what I proposed with this ordinance is just cleaning up the city's charter, because even though you've got all that language in the city charter saying you have to, go through the panel and the court and everything, that's all superseded by state code. And so what I'm proposing in that ordinance is just saying the salary of members of council, including the mayor, vice mayor, shall be set by ordinance in accordance with the requirements of the Code of Virginia, and take all the other stuff out. And that's just a cleanup. It's something that will avoid confusion down the road if council ever decides to provide itself with a pay increase. It'll make us in compliance with the state code. And so that's why it's being presented. So that's all I have.
You're on mute, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Mr. Williams. This is a public hearing for consideration of adoption of the ordinance to approve the amendment section 2.7 of the city charter pertaining to council salaries. If anyone would like to speak, I'm gonna open up to the public at this current time.
Mr. Ingram.
All right.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, Mr. Ingram.
Thank you. Good afternoon. Patrick Ingram, 836 South Gilfield Drive. One of my biggest concerns is the lack of citizen engagement on the matter. I'm under the impression that the creation of the charter was created with collaboration of citizens, not just public information sessions. And to my knowledge, in my ward of Ward 6, we haven't had an opportunity with our council person to discuss this proposed change. And so I'm curious in terms of what other changes can be made to the charter comprehensively, such as ridding the ward system or even having a strong mayor. And so as a citizen, as a taxpaying citizen, I question if that can take place with citizens, and thus moving forward with a more comprehensive change to the charter as it relates to salaries, as it may be changed, reflecting the election of a strong mayor system or even an open ward system. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, Ms. Barbara Rudolph.
Good afternoon, Barb Rudolph, 1675 Mount Vernon Street. It's interesting the way this is being presented as a technical issue where the city charter is in conflict with the Code of Virginia. I don't want to, it would take too long to get into it, but in the prior year session in 2020, there was a bill that was being considered that had to do with raising these incremental increases that are shown on this chart. So, and it was introduced by a delegate from Charlottesville. At that point, I talked with her about Petersburg's unique charter provisions, which is what Mr. Williams has introduced. And she, I'm sure, consulted with the Department of Legislative Services, and nothing came out at that time about the notwithstanding and our charter being superseded by the state code. In fact, it seemed like the opposite. So what I'd suggest, if you all are actually really interested in making sure this conforms, I'd ask you to coordinate with the Department of Legislative Services of the General Assembly to make sure that what you're trying to do is going to accomplish what you want. I thought maybe the approach would just be that because so many other localities are relying solely on this Code of Virginia provision to set salaries, that you were seeking to make Petersburg be consistent with other localities, which actually, in my opinion, is a stronger argument in favor of getting rid of what's in our charter. If you all want to have salaries that can increase without the process of the court and the citizens panel and so forth. I would just end with saying the people who came up with the charter originally and wanted participation of the judicial system and citizens who were, interested in contributing. It didn't preclude city council getting raises, but it did allow for greater participation and consideration of things. And I think it still has value. And I'd like to think that you all would believe that you would get a fair shake from citizens if we were to continue doing it that way. Thank you.
All right, Garrett, next up. Any other hands?
No, Mr. Mayor.
All right, seeing no other hands, this public hearing is closed. Next, I have any discussion from members of council?
Yes, Mr. Mayor,
Councilman Hill?
I move that we adopt the ordinance.
Second.
Motion a second, any discussion from members of council? Seeing none, Madam Clerk, could you please call the roll?
Councilmember Cuthbert.
Would you call me last, please?
Yes. Yes. Councilmember Wilson Smith.
Aye.
Councilmember Myers.
Aye.
Councilmember Hart. Councilmember Hill.
Aye.
Vice Mayor Smith Lee.
Aye.
Mayor Perm.
Aye.
Councilmember Cuthbert.
I'm gonna vote aye, but I thought Ms. Rudolph made some good points. Aye.
Thank you. Motion's passed.
Next, we'll move on to item 8C, which is a public hearing in consideration of a supplemental appropriation for Petersburg Public Schools in the amount of $2,514,841. Second reading. Reason: Petersburg City Public Schools received additional federal CARES funding in the amount of $1,354,321, plus an additional transfer from the city's CARES funding in the amount of $522,495. Local funds were also received to feed students over winter break, a data analysis position, and air purifiers. Lastly, state grants were received to assist special ed teachers with tuition reimbursement and other state funds for positive behavior, as well as increases in grant awards, federal Perkin grant, McKinney, Vento, and Title I. The total of all these equal this appropriation total of $2,514,841. And at this time, we have, do we have Dr. Petrie Martin here?
Do you know what name she's under?
I don't, but if anybody from the city want to take the lead on it, because I don't see her here on the call.
Mr. Mayor, is Mr. Floyd on the call?
All right, is Mr. Floyd there, Garrett? I don't see him.
I know, Mr. Mayor, Mr. Floyd I did see him early on the call. If not, I think specifically if there are specific questions to be addressed, I can figure out how to get staff to address that, but I think this is just asking for the approval to proceed.
All right, so at this time, it's a public hearing, so we'll open the floor.
Hello,
I see him on the call.
Hey, Mr. Floyd, how you doing?
doing all right. Yes, Mr. Lyons kind of addressed it. This is a month or so ago, the schools brought forward secondary appropriations and council approved it. This is just their second round. There was a lot of money that was withheld previously because of COVID and things like that, that now they're actually turning them over to the schools. They just need the approval for it to be appropriated.
Okay. All right, this is a public hearing, so I'll open up the floor for public comment on consideration of the supplemental appropriation for Petersburg Public Schools in the amount of $2,514,841. Please raise your hand in the Zoom when you will be recognized. At this time, Garrett, any hands?
No, Mr. Mayor.
All right, seeing no hands, this public hearing is now closed. Next, I have any discussion or motion from council?
So moved. Second.
That was from Councilman Hart.
Yeah.
All right, and the second from Councilman Hill. Any discussion from members of council? Seeing none, Madam Clerk, would you please call the roll?
Councilmember Cuthbert.
Aye.
Councilmember Wilson Smith.
Aye.
Councilmember Myers. Councilmember Hart.
Aye.
Councilmember Hill.
Good morning to everyone.
Councilmember Hill.
Aye.
Okay, thank you.
Good participant.
Vice Mayor Smith Lee. Mayor Pern.
Aye.
Motion's passed.
Next, we'll move on to item 9, public information period. A public information period limited in time to 30 minutes shall be part of an order of business at each regular council meeting. Each speaker shall be a resident or business owner of the city and shall be limited to 3 minutes. No speaker will be permitted to speak on any item scheduled for consideration on the regular docket of the meeting at which the speaker is to speak. The order of speakers are limited by the 30-minute time period shall be determined as follows. First, a chronological order, the notice of persons who've notified the clerk no later than 12 o'clock noon of the day of the meeting. B, second, a chronological order of the sign-up persons who have signed the sign-up sheet placed by the clerk in the rear of the meeting room prior to the meeting removed from the consent agenda. At this time, Ms. Jackson, do we have anyone signed up to speak?
Yes, we had
Okay.
one speaker, Giovanni Brusto.
Okay. Mr. Brewster, can you hear me?
And I seen him on the call.
Yeah, he's out there.
I actually have 2 of them listed. I'll try to unmute either one and see what happens.
Okay. Mr. Brewster, can you hear me? Guess not at the first one. How about the second one, Garrett?
I tried them both. I don't see
Okay.
any response from
Okay.
one yet.
This should be it.
That's it. Okay, we can hear you now, Mr. Brewster.
All right, perfect. I'm Giovanni Gusto. I live at 119 Curtis Court. And first I wanted to mention, as I understand how the meetings work, questions are to be asked during the first, or during one meeting and they're answered during the following. And I'm certain I asked a few questions, I believe about 3 during the last one, and some other people asked questions as well that were not answered. So I'm not exactly sure how you all intend on moving forward with that. But regarding the search for a new city manager, in 2017, when the city did its last search, a panel was put together that was supposed to include citizens. But as I recall, there were no citizens were included. I believe it was stated that there were no city residents that were interested in giving input, which I kind of find hard to believe. I think that most of us could probably think of about 10 people who would be interested, half of which will probably be speaking to council today. So in moving forward from there, I'm wondering, For this new process in finding the next city manager, are we going to make an effort to reach out to citizens again, or are we going to pretend that about 30,000 people don't care? Also, Virginia recently received a failing grade on public corruption and government transparency from the State Integrity Investigation Project. And the way that I think that our locality can address this would be if we actually have our city council meetings to be archived online, as other cities do. Which leads me to the next topic. I believe that our previous city manager said that she had intentions on having the council meetings to be streamed from the city website with a target date of December 2020. I know we're a couple months after that, so I know that things happen. Just wanted to know if that's still on. Have we made any alternate plans? And in 2015, renovations began on the Southside Depot project with an anticipated 40,000 annual tourists coming to the city, and about 700,000 in state grants, I believe, coming in. The Robert Bob Group also suggested about $1 million of city funds for this as well. I don't think any updates have occurred on this since 2017. And I believe the city received the grant money. I'm not exactly sure. So I'm wondering where that project is. And when the last city manager started, the school board suggested they wanted 3 new elementary schools, a middle school classroom and multi-purpose room, and a high school field house. The city manager said in the 2018 capital improvement plan, and I quote, "The city's ability to fund capital projects is directly related to its ability to borrow money." And she also said, second, the city must have an investment grade credit rating. So as I recall, that is, I believe, where we are now. So I'm wondering if the school board will have a chance to have the items that they requested. That's all I have for now. Thank you.
Next up, Mr. Corey Harris.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Good afternoon, Corey Harris, 2316 Anderson Street. Imagine being at a bus stop going to work when it's below freezing or the temperature is above 90 degrees. Imagine being a parent that's eager to teach their child, study with their child, and they're unable to do it because they're too tired because of the job that they have. Imagine citizens who are afraid to come out of their homes because they hear gunshots. That is the reality of so many citizens in the city of Petersburg. But we don't talk about that. Unfortunately, the conversation when it comes to these citizens, it's not really a focus, and that's troubling. Everybody wants a better Petersburg. I believe that. But in order to get a better Petersburg, we must focus on our priorities. And a poverty rate that's over 20%, that should be a priority. Because I believe the poverty rate has been over 20% for quite some time. But we overlook it. We can't fix this issue with hope. We must fix it with action. And I don't see us doing that. Petersburg politics has become self-promotion, while the majority of our citizens suffer. That's not a good image. That's not how we rebuild a city. For years, I've seen this. It's not just the past 5 years. These issues have been going on for decades. Who's going to have the courage to step up and fight for these citizens? Who's going to step up and do the right thing? Take care.
All right, Garrett, anybody else you see? Any hands up?
Do not see any, Mr. Mayor.
Okay. Thank everyone for their input. So this public information period is now closed. So next we'll move right on to business of reports from the mayor and other members of city council. We'll start off with Councilman Cuthbert.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I don't have any report to make.
Okay, let's move on to Councilwoman Wilson Smith.
Thank you so much. I want to bring our attention to some time ago when we would talk about water issues. I would always ask the question, is the water department talking to the Department of Social Services? And we found out that they were not. Or when Senator Morrissey came to talk to us about COVID vaccine, and I asked the question, have you spoken with the health department? And he had not. So it brings us to today. It's in reference to events on the news about the elderly citizen with sewage leaking in her house. I found out that this event was first reported in February. I knew nothing about it until it came on the news. But I wondered at that point, were we talking to one another? Because here we are in April, and I still don't know or understand why adult protective services were not involved, or if they were involved, I can't see them being involved in, and she's still living in that condition. I don't understand why it is that this was reported in February and we sit back and rest on an ordinance written in 1981 and no one brings it to our attention that something's wrong with our ordinance. We need to act. We need to do something in February. And I want to ask us, when things like this come to our attention, can we establish some type of protocol where there is an action meeting that takes place between department heads? For instance, once this was brought about, social services, the health department, code compliance, perhaps the city attorney, everybody should have been involved so that we're not in the month of April, and an 88-year-old citizen is still living in that condition. I think that's really bad. I think that's sad on our part, and it just makes us look like we don't care, and I know that I do. So a process in place would help that. I also wanted to piggyback on our last meeting where it was discussed, and it's in our minutes that we just voted on, that there's a lot of money still owed. Page 19 says $402,140 still in the rear for water bills. You know, exactly. So what are we doing? I asked the question about the money at Pathways. They had close to 90,000. And the money that the mayor and Councilman Myers had raised, which was 17,000, I still don't have an answer. What are we doing with that money? Where is it? Where is it on our current budget where we can see where that money went and what was done with it? And speaking of monies, we still have collection agencies, I'm hoping. I don't know if we do or not, but if we do, then are they getting the reports from our system? If they are getting the reports from our system, how is it on a quarterly basis, twice a year? And can these collection agencies please come to us at the next council meeting and give us a report about what they have received, how often they are receiving it, and how much they have collected? And are we making a space in our upcoming budget for any projected amounts that the collection agencies will get us in the next budget cycle? I don't see or understand where it is on the budget where the FOIA money goes. What line item do I look for to see how much we've collected in FOIA, where it goes to, what's the anticipated amount that we might get from FOIA, and everything as it relates to FOIA. I do not know that I did ask about money coming from our the movies or that take place in Petersburg, and I haven't looked at the new budget, but that's supposed to be in a particular line item as well. So I would like to see that. I'd like to ask the mayor, please, at our next meeting under the section where we do recognitions, if we could recognize our sheriff, as she was selected by Channel 8 to be recognized as an outstanding woman of the year. I don't know how to pull the video from Channel 8, but I know it's out there, and if we could show that and give her the recognition for an outstanding woman in our city, I think that would be good under that section of our agenda. And lastly, when people are out on sick leave, who's paying the insurance? I know a certain amount of their check goes towards health insurance, but if they have no more sick leave or they're not earning any more money, is the city picking up their tab? If someone could come back and answer that for me, I would appreciate that. And is that projected in the budget, how much the city would pick up or would not pick up? How is that handled when people cannot earn but remain employees with us? I think that's all I had. There may be something else. I apologize if it was too much, but I think that's it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Next, Councilman Hart, you have any items?
Yeah, good afternoon, everyone.
Good afternoon.
One thing I want to bring up is within the last month, I get several calls in regards to trash services not being picked up on the days that they're supposed to be, especially the recycle. And, you know, maybe we need to talk with them again about how they're scheduling these pickups. That's all I have.
Okay, thank you. Next we go to Councilman Myers.
I don't have anything at this time, Mr. Mayor.
All right, thank you. Let's go to Councilman Hill.
Yes, good evening, everyone. Well, good afternoon. First of all, I'd like for the interim city manager to, when you get to your report, Mr. City Manager, that you will address the water billing issue that all of us have been getting calls that the water bills have been not right. So if you can address that during your comment. Also, I want to thank the residents of Ward 2 who came out for our Ward 2 meeting a few weeks ago. And I thank all the staff who came out as well, who participated in it. Thank even Dr. Petrie Martin as well. So thank you all for coming out. We had a lot of great conversation and questioning, and prayerfully we answered all your questions. That was about 2.5 weeks ago or so. Also, as you know, this is the time for grass cutting season. And I know last year we had mentioned that we would incorporate Mr. Jamie Fagan in the weed treatment in some of our parts. So I like to see some type of proposal done with that, because I know a lot of our, if you go a lot of our areas, like say coming up Crater Road, past the cemetery, things like that, some are getting on and off the ramps, things like that, you know, our beautification areas, whereas we have a lot of weeds and not grass. So if we can get a hold of control of the weeds somehow, then the grass will grow straight up, because I just see a whole bunch of weeds everywhere. So if we can have something on that, I'm pretty sure Mr. Fagan, he can probably address some of that, you know, with the right weed control, something like that. By him being a PGA, you know, running the golf course. Also, I want to, and I guess this right here will be for the Commission of Revenue, but we have because it's summertime, we have a lot of people popping up serving food on the sides of the streets and things like that. I just want to make sure that they are properly licensed to do so, you know, serving hot dogs and things of that nature. You know, it is COVID. We wouldn't want anybody who's not licensed just because you got a grill in the tent that you can just pop up and serve food. Not saying that they're not, but make sure that they have the proper credentials to do so. And also, I am for the public, after we get down to the final 2 or 3, to be involved in the search for the city manager, as far as questioning, maybe soliciting in questions like they do in other localities, whereas the council can ask questions that the citizens have submitted once we get down to the final pool of individuals. I think that's fair. I think a lot of localities have moved to that as well. So I am in favor of that. And last but not least, I don't know how true it is, but I hear that some individuals was doing interviews for economic developer, and that I know it won't sanction by this city council, and I don't know about the city manager. I don't want to get involved in that right now, but if that's something that's going on behind the scenes, I think we need to stop that, or those individuals need to stop that, because we're not hiring any head of directors until we get a city manager in here. So those are my comments, Mr. Mayor. Thank you.
All right, Vice Mayor Smith Lee.
I'm here.
Okay.
I'm here.
Great.
All right. I got a little lengthy report. So first, I want to say congratulations to Sheriff Crawford for being recognized for an outstanding woman representing the city of Petersburg. Congratulations, Sheriff Crawford. You've done an outstanding job. And the Triad, I tell you, you have formulated something that is out of this world. And maybe the blueprint from what you've done can help us in other areas. Thank you so much. First, I want to thank everyone who participated in the Ward 6 cleanup on Saturday. It was a big success. I had quite a few people to come out. First, I want to thank the Fort Lee Petroleum and Water Division, Mr. Hughes, who Heliod, I know I pronounced it wrong, Temple, for Darren, help me out. What's the proper name? At the Masonic Temple, they came out. Also, Public Works, Mount Olivet Baptist Church, Raymond's Word of Ministry, Pastor Sean Lewis, Colonel Terrence Singleton, Resident Cynthia Jones, the Deputy City Manager, Ms. Tyus, the Director of Public Works, Tangela Ennis, Petersburg Parks and Recreation, Tammy Yerby, Ryan Massenberg, and Ms. Bland. and all who came out to help. And the Boy Scouts from Chester Pack 2815, the Cub Scouts came out. I want to say thank you. And this is on a serious note. I want to as a member of council, I'm saddened by what happened to the young lady, the young girl in Ward 6. Also, the accident and shooting on Tally Avenue. I'm not only concerned about the young lady and the young man that lost his life, but I'm concerned about all the children and the citizens in the city of Petersburg. I know that gun violence and other violent crimes cannot and will not be reduced by legislations and policies. But I do want to use my voice to say I believe in our police department and know they will do what they need to do to make the city of Petersburg safe and do the right thing. So if you see something, please say something. But I also connect with the police department, and I just want to share some things with you from the comparison from 2020 to 2020, 2021, 2020 to 2021. First, I want to thank the police department and all the citizens and all who partner with the city of Petersburg. There has been a reduction in murder, in the murder rates of 62%, because in 2020, there were 8. And as of today, we have 3, and 2 of them were domestic and 1 was an accidental shooting. Also, as in the assault, there were 14, and as of today, there has been 7, which that's a 50% reduction. Also, with theft and larceny, in 2020, there was 191, and as of today, 2021, there has been 74. So there has been a reduction of 61%. And in burglaries, there has been 35, and it's down like 29% compared to today of 25. So there is an overall low, but we still got a lot of work to do. But like I said, if we see something, say something. And also, I want to let you know to please join us in our joint ward meeting that will be held on April the 22nd, 2021 at 6 p.m. in the back of Cool Spring Elementary School. Please come out, and they're gonna be our key people like the deputy city manager, the interim city manager, the police chief, someone from utilities, fire department. Please come out and join us. That completes and concludes my report, Mayor.
All right. Thank you, Vice Mayor Smith-Lee. And last but not least, I just want to also applaud our Sheriff Vanessa Crawford for being nominated as with the Remarkable Woman of the Year Award. And that was over 200 applicants is what they reviewed. And we're just so excited to have our sheriff, who does a phenomenal job here in Petersburg with her amount of outreach and service here to the citizens of Petersburg. I just want everyone to know, I know Councilman Will Smith had mentioned it, but it is running on channel 15, our local access channel. So I encourage everyone to check it out because we have her complete interview on there. I happened to catch it on Sunday with my daughter, and it was just about wonderful to see her because I heard about it, hadn't seen it. So please check it out on channel 15. And also with that channel, I just want to thank Kimmy for what she's done to bring in Petersburg area regional tourism. And she's really done a lot with that channel to upgrade it from just being a channel with just some words of information on it. So I thank Ms. Kimmy for that. Also, we just brought in our 6 firemen that just completed the academy. So everyone, please welcome our new firemen. Had the pleasure of meeting them and their family members, and they're excited to work here in the city of Petersburg, and we're thankful for their service here as well. And last but not least, CFS. I know we have been, the trash pickup have been behind, and I just want everyone to know that they having the same problem in Colonial Heights, Hopewell, as well, with trash service being behind. I know they have a shortage of drivers and workers. So anyone who's interested in working for CFS, collecting our disposal, we encourage everyone to come out there because they're hiring and they're really short right now. And they are like many other businesses that are hurting with the lack of workers to fill positions. So anything that anyone can do to help in them increase their workforce, and also if everyone will bear with them as they continue to work overtime with the staff they have in picking up our refuse. That's all the items that I have. So I'll move on now to item 11, items removed from the consent agenda. There are no items. Item 12, unfinished business, consideration of reappointment to the Economic Development Authority. Councilman Myers.
Yes, sir, Mr. Mayor. I'd like to recommend Joel Erb for the position.
Is that a motion?
Yes, sir. Let's move. I move that we appoint Joel Erb to the Economic Development Authority.
I second.
We have a second from Councilman Hill. All right, question, Councilman Wilson Smith.
Yes. I looked at all of the applications that we have. We have a total of 3. I can certainly see why Mr. Myers would nominate Mr. Erb. Mr. Erb's application came to us on February 25th. And we have applications that came to us prior to that, which fit the criteria. One additional application fit the criteria of experience and education. So what is it that, how are we determining who it is that we want to place on this board?
Councilman Myers, do you want to chime in on that?
So where I reviewed Mr. Erb's application, his resume, and I felt that he would provide the community service that we are required to provide to our citizens, and I believe that his services to the community will be outstanding.
And it is. He has an excellent application and an excellent resume. But my question was, what is our determining factors between the 3 of these applications? Are we giving consideration to whose application came in first? Are we giving consideration to education and or experience? What is our determining factors in deciding who should get this position? And it's only one position open, right, Ms. Jackson?
That is correct.
Thank you. Am I not saying it right?
I hear we have a motion from Councilman Myers and a second, and the thing I do know is I know Mr. Erb did reach out to members of council. I don't know, did he call you, Councilman Wilson Smith?
I have not spoken to Mr.
Okay.
But what I'm asking, even if I had, what I'm asking is, of the 3 applications, what are the determining factors for choosing one of them? That's what I'm asking, regardless of who's talked to whom. When we look at this information, now I made myself a grid. I looked at the data application, the education, and the experience. And Mr. Erb certainly does have it all. What is the determining factor? If another person has it all, how do we choose between one or the other? What's the determining factor?
Well, if I may, Mr. Mayor, one of the determining factors is that Mr. Erb lives in Ward 5. And so I made the suggestion, and based on the criteria that you've outlined, and then the conversations that we have had prior, that Mr. Erb's application falls in line with respect to our previous conversations. And yes, he has the extenuating experience which we need on the Economic Development Authority. He is a Ward 5 member, and so based on the conversation from Councilman Hill at the last meeting and Mayor Parham, my determination was to select Mr. Erb.
And that conversation was the fact that we had more people from Ward 3 on there than any other ward. And
that's correct, sir.
And I know I had an applicant there that was highly qualified as well. But I know everyone wanted to have more representation throughout the city and not just 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 people from Ward 3.
That's correct, Mr. Mayor.
So then the determining factor for this is that we need someone who is not in Ward 3, who is not in Ward 3. That's the determining factor.
No, the determining factor was looking at Mr. Erb's resume.
Absolutely.
That he sent us. And when you look at what is here, when you're looking at the city council's duty is to appoint someone who knows about how to own, lease, dispose of properties, promoting industry and trade, manufacturing, industrial and governmental. He's worked in all those sectors. And I don't know if you want to, if there's something about him that you don't like, that you see where he's not qualified at, I think we would say it now.
No, I don't know Mr. Erb, and there's nothing about him that I don't like or that I like a whole lot. I'm simply going by the resume and the application. The same qualifications that he possesses, another applicant possesses the same thing. I was simply asking, how do we choose one over the other? What is it that we want? And it looks like to me that we would want someone that's not in Ward 3, according to what we just said. And so then Mr. Erb would stand out as opposed to the other one, if that's our determining factor. That's all. I don't know Mr. Erb. I could never say I don't like him. I can only say I go by his application and his resume, which is very outstanding.
And that was the basis of the
And that's my determination as far as why I submitted his name.
And so is the application from someone else. So when you get two people.
But I represent Ward 5. And so the application in which I put on the floor and got a second, that's who I chose to submit. Now, if anybody else wants to submit somebody else's name, they have the ability to do so.
My question isn't about the people, but about.
You asked about Councilwoman Wilson Smith, you asked about the determination. Right. And my determination was based on the outstanding application from Mr. Erb. I represent Ward 5. Therefore, I am partial to persons in Ward 5.
Right. And I
to serve and represent. And I know of his work. I don't know of anyone else's work. But if anybody else chooses in their particular ward to submit someone during the course of this nomination period, they can be happy to do so. But I've submitted my motion and it's been seconded. And so that's my determination was based on his application and his service in his community.
Right, and I have an outstanding candidate too, and Kofi Adai, but he is another Ward 3 applicant. And
right.
and in talking with him, I discussed that with council's desire to not have this EDA only being represented by Ward 3, but I still stand by my guy, Kofi Adaya, being qualified as well. So it was council's determination that that they wanted more inclusion of other wards in this EDA. And I don't have any problems supporting Mr. Erb because he submitted an outstanding resume, and I've never had anyone like that submit a resume and contact you personally and sent the email.
Amen.
He went above and beyond, and I don't see where we can't support him for this EDA position.
Please just let the record show, I have nothing against Mr. Erb. I am not saying I'm not in support of him. I simply asked the question so that I could have guidelines when making a choice. You give me people to choose from, I have to have guidelines. I think we all should, but the record should show there is nothing against Mr. Erb and his outstanding resume and qualifications.
All right, any other questions? We have a motion and a second there for Mr. Erb for the EDA. Seeing no other hands, Madam Clerk, would you please call the roll?
Councilmember Cuthbert,
Aye.
Councilmember Wilson Smith,
Aye.
Councilmember Myers,
Aye.
Councilmember Hart. Did he say aye, Garrett? Councilmember Hart? Okay. Councilmember Hill?
Aye.
Vice Mayor Smith-Lee?
Aye.
Mayor Perrin?
Aye.
Motion's passed.
Thank you all.
Next, we move on to item 13A, new business, consideration of appropriation for the Sheriff's Triad Crime Prevention Grant in the amount of $899.46. Second reading. The purpose of these funds are to purchase equipment for the seniors who are Triad members to help with crime prevention and consumer protection. It is recommended that this appropriation be approved as it will allow the Sheriff's Office to purchase the safety equipment for the seniors participating in Triad.
Mr. Mayor, I move that we approve the appropriation.
Second.
We have a motion as a second. All right, Madam Clerk.
Councilmember Cuthbert,
Aye.
Councilmember Wilson Smith, Councilmember Myers,
Aye.
Councilmember Hart, Councilmember Hill,
Aye.
Vice Mayor Smith-Lee,
Aye.
Mayor Perrin.
Aye.
Motion's passed.
Next, we move on to item 13B, consideration of a resolution approving a development agreement for the property at 627 North South Street. And that is, the purpose is to consider a development agreement for the property on 627 North South Street. It is recommended that the city council approves a resolution approving the development agreement and authorize the city manager to execute the agreement.
So moved.
Second.
A motion is second. Any discussion from members of council on the motion? Seeing none, Madam Clerk, would you please call the roll?
Councilmember Cuthbert,
Aye.
Councilmember Wilson Smith,
No.
Councilmember Myers,
Aye.
Councilmember Hart, Councilmember Hill,
Aye.
Vice Mayor Smith-Lee,
Aye.
Mayor Perrin.
Aye.
Motion's passed.
Next, item 13C, consideration of appropriation for federal grant 2019-014 for transit operating budget for $186,023. Background, Petersburg Area Transit is seeking permission to utilize this older operating grant. These funds were applied for in 2019 and were not fully expended. This grant requires a match. The funding for the match was appropriated in the FY21 budget. The appropriation of this grant does not affect the city's general fund allocation to Petersburg Area Transit. It's recommended City Council approve the attached appropriation of $186,023 after the second reading.
So moved.
Second.
Motion and a second. Any discussion from members of council? Seeing none, Madam Clerk, would you please call the roll?
Councilmember Cuthbert,
Aye.
Councilmember Wilson Smith,
Aye.
Councilmember Myers,
Aye.
Councilmember Hart. Did he say aye?
I believe he's dropped off. I don't see him on the phone anymore.
Okay, thank you. Councilmember Hill,
Aye.
Vice Mayor Smith,
Aye.
please. Mayor Purr.
Aye.
Motion's passed.
Next, move on to item 13E, consideration of appropriation for an additional $14,703 for FY 2021 state aid to Petersburg Public Library, second reading. It's recommended that City Council approve the increase of state aid in amount of $14,703 to the Petersburg Public Library.
Mr. Mayor, I move that we approve the increase to the state aid for the Petersburg Public Library.
Second.
Motion and a second, a discussion from members of council. Seeing none, Madam Clerk, could you please call the roll?
Councilmember Cuthbert,
Aye.
Councilmember Myers,
Aye.
Councilmember Wilson
Aye.
Smith. Hart is absent. Councilmember
Aye.
Hill. Vice Mayor Smith, please.
Aye.
Mayor Purr.
Aye.
Motion's passed.
Next, we have item 13F, a request to consider a resolution of the City Council of the City of Petersburg, Virginia, for governing body approval of the issuance by the Petersburg Housing Redevelopment Authority of its multifamily residential rental affordable housing facility revenue bonds for the benefit of Petersburg East Housing Partners, LP, and its Petersburg East 1 and 2 Apartments Rehabilitation Project located in the city of Petersburg. Purpose is to consider a resolution approving the issuance by Petersburg Redevelopment Housing Authority for its multifamily housing revenue bonds for the acquisition, construction, renovation, rehabilitation, and equipping of approximately 168 unit Petersburg East 1 and 2 apartments, multifamily housing facility located in the city of Petersburg. Is Mr. Tabor on?
Mr. Mayor, Mr. Tabor should be on. I'll wait for him, but I know he's been working closely with this group and we feel prepared to address any specific questions. He should be joining us. I know that he was on, so.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Great. Mr. Mayor, Vice Mayor, and members of the City Council, we have Mr. Espertoli from Williams Mullen on the line in case council has any questions. This is similar to the previously approved bond items for similar types of housing developments.
Is back on you, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, all right. Councilman Cuthbert?
Mr. Mayor, would someone explain to me who is going to own these apartments when they've been, I suppose, reconstructed? Is that what's going on here? Is this an existing Petersburg Redevelopment and Housing Authority project, or is it going to end up as a Petersburg Redevelopment and Housing Authority project? I need some clarification, please.
Okay, Garrett, do you see Mr. Espertoli?
I just allowed both of them in, actually, or it's co-hosted. They should be able to unmute themselves.
Can you hear me? I believe I'm unmuted now.
Yes, we can.
Okay, I can speak to that question. The project is being acquired by Petersburg East Housing Partners, LP, a Virginia limited liability company that is owned and controlled by Vitus, a national housing development business headquartered in Seattle, Washington.
So we have a public housing authority that is financing a private development. Is that what is going on?
Yes, sir. These are known as private activity bonds, which are eligible for tax exempt financing because of the treatment they're provided by the Internal Revenue Code. And the Petersburg Housing Authority is, an experienced issuer of these bonds. The course of the years, they've financed a number of projects on this basis.
Charlie, if I may, and Mr. Mayor, what particular project is this for? Again, what area is this project?
This is near Croatan, the Petersburg East multifamily residential development adjacent to the former Kmart property, just to the west.
And Charlie, come on back in there if you want to, but we're trying to. So Charlie, ask that question again. So who's going to own these properties? I think, Charlie, is that what you meant to find out?
Right, yes. Are they going to be privately owned at the end of the day? And if they're privately owned at the end of the day, why is a public authority getting involved in the financing at all? And I would add a footnote. Do we have any idea how many murders took place at Croatan? And are we just replacing, one area in which there've been a lot of murders with another area in which they're going to be a lot of murders? I mean, how are we ever going to get our murder rate down if we just keep doing the same old thing? But so there are two issues here. One is this murder rate, and why, as a council, are we creating the environment in which we're likely to have more? And the first issue, though, is what business is it of a public authority to subsidize a private investment? That doesn't seem right to me. It seems kind of un-American. But
Can I speak to Mr. Cuthbert? Can I speak to your first question about the subsidy? These are private activity bonds. There's no subsidy coming from any direction other than the federal government. And the process is not something for which the authority, your Petersburg Housing Authority, or the city has any economic responsibility. It's why they call them private activity bonds. The affordable housing space is something that is given enhanced attention under the tax code to facilitate the improvement of projects like this one. This project is going to be rehabilitated and improved to get up to more current standards of conditions. I would offer to have you guys unmute Ms. Brooke Charette, who's also on the line here to answer any questions. I do know I can speak to this. A security report was submitted to the Housing Authority by Petersburg East Partners, and they take that seriously.
well, they take it seriously. That's great. They take it seriously. In the meantime, our murder rate goes through the roof, and every time we have a murder, we are penalized a couple of points by the Robert Johnson Foundation, and we come up at 134 out of 134 as the least healthy Petersburg, Virginia municipality. And yet we keep doing the same old thing. And here we're talking about rebuilding Croatan right next to what? Pin Oaks, is that it? So we're gonna have a concentration of poverty. And whether we like it or not, the experience teaches us that this is a breeding ground for crime, and
Well, Charlie, stop. Charlie, I want to get back to your original question. So why is it that the housing authority, who owns these properties now? Are these properties privately owned now, or does the housing authority own these properties in question?
They're privately owned currently. I would have to
They're
defer
privately
to,
owned. Okay, all right, I'm sorry. Okay, I'm sorry, sir. You said they're privately owned currently.
yeah, I would have to defer to Ms. Charette as to who the seller is in
And
terms of the
yeah,
vendor.
and are these newly acquired?
They will be newly acquired, assuming the bond issuance is approved. Yes.
This is Brooke Schritt. Can you guys hear me?
Yes, we can.
I can hear you, but I'm waiting for my question to be answered, and that is, are these newly acquired? And the reason I asked, are they newly acquired, and are the former owners all of a sudden revitalizing these properties? Because these properties are in a dilapidated state, and we're trying to figure out why should we support something from someone who is not taking care of these particular facilities I know the last 10 years, 18 years I've been here. So I'm trying to figure out who is the owner of these properties and who's going to take care of them. I think that's what Mr. Cuthbert is trying to figure out, who's going to care about the safety of the people that live there, when it seems like no one is doing that at best right now.
Absolutely. So this is Brooke Schrepp with Vitus. We are the ultimate buyer of the properties. We purchased Petersburg East 1 and 2 on April 1st from White Hill Estates, an unaffiliated third-party seller. We have no shared ownership interest with them. It was completely third-party. I will absolutely acknowledge the property is not in good shape. The previous seller did not take great care of the property. So that's exactly why we're coming in to purchase the property, to reposition it, bring the property back up to market rate quality, add in security features so that, presumably, hopefully, we can reduce the crime issues that this property has historically seen. I'm happy to provide more detail, but I don't want to speak out of turn.
That's fine, and thank you. Thank you for that response. Go ahead, Mr. Cuthbert, if you want to chime in again.
I think we go end up at the same point. We got absentee landlords that undoubtedly see the Petersburg project that's being proposed as a profit center, and the name of the game is going to be to minimize expenses and to maximize revenues. And it's right next to what? Pin Oaks, and we've just got concentration next to concentration, cheek by jowl, and we're expecting that there's going to be a different result because there might be new appliances in the kitchen. I wish the world were otherwise, but I think we're about to give new life to, or extend the life of a problem that has plagued Petersburg for much too long. And I'm not in a position to support this as a result. I think we've got to face reality as it is. And the reality is that if we just pack in 168 low-income units next to however many go be in Pin Oaks, and we've got absentee landlord, we go end up exactly where we are right now in another 10, 15 years, maybe a lot sooner than that. So I cannot support this. I wish I could, but the watchword has got to be balance and common sense. And this says to me that that area is out of balance with this type of development. And my common sense tells me, look at the history of what we've seen in the past, murder after murder. And then we wonder and wring our hands, well, why is our health rating so low? this is the beginning of an opportunity to do something about it. And so I cannot support this.
Okay.
Mr. Mayor, if I may.
Myers?
Yeah, and I'm sorry, what's the young lady's name? I apologize. That is the third party, the seller or buyer?
Brooke Charette.
Brooke Charette, Ms. Charette. As you all start to develop this particular property, to what extent are you all going to do as far as, are you going to demolish and rebuild, or are you going to renovate, or what other, let's say, enhanced renovations are you going to do to these properties to deter some of the stuff that Mr. Cuthbert is talking about? Now, I am a proponent for low income tax credits and all of those things, and market rate is even better. But the fact of the matter is that based on the history and what we have seen here in Petersburg, as we are trying to grow our city, we'd like to know what efforts are you all going to do to help us enhance, the vitality of the city of Petersburg on that particular side of the town, as you have these two developments that has caused a real issue with respect to that corridor over there, if you don't mind.
Yes, of course. So we are not demolishing the building. It's, fully occupied, although it does have high vacancy. So we don't want to displace any residents in demolishing and restarting the property. We are planning about $60,000 a unit in rehab. That includes new roofing, new full kitchens with new appliances, countertops and cabinets. Same with the bathrooms, new plumbing fixtures, cabinets and flooring, new water heaters and new split systems for efficient heating and cooling, and then flooring and painting throughout. So pretty much just a gut rehab of all of the units. And then in addition, fixing building systems that have aged over time, and adding a community space. So really just fixing what's already there. This property does have a Section 8 HAP contract on it, which covers the entire property. So it's federally subsidized, which I think was mentioned. So regardless of, if we were to come in and purchase this property has to stay affordable and has to kind of keep going. And we'd rather fix the property as it is than let it continue to deteriorate. So that's where we're coming from.
Okay, well, thank you for that. And to add a little bit to form of security on the property.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, sorry, I neglected to include that. So we, like I said, we closed on the property about 3 weeks ago. The second day after we closed, we signed a contract for the addition of 20 security cameras on site, which will fully cover, map-wise, all angles. They have actually, for the last 6 months or so, they've had 2 armed guards 24 hours a day. They are continuing that service. Obviously, we want to continue to have a kind of a strong grasp of the security state there. So until we get our property management team fully kicked off, the previous seller didn't have any on-site management staff. So we are working on hiring somebody for that position. And we hope eventually we can kind of scale back the on-site presence of security guards. But for now, it seems that is necessary for this kind of intermediary time.
All right, thank you. Mr. Mayor, if you don't mind, I'd like to turn it back over to Mr. Cuthbert, if he will.
Thank you, Councilman Myers, for your good comments. I just cannot imagine us wanting to prolong the life of a project that currently requires 2 armed security guards. New appliances and a shiny sink in the bathroom are not going to change that. I wish it were that easy. Thank you. I don't have any other comments to make, Mr. Mayor.
All right, thank you, Look, and at this time, does the city staff have, can they provide us with the number of service calls that's been out to Petersburg East in the last year? Do we have that data?
Mr. Mayor, I don't know if we have that data, but I know one thing, Chief Christian and his staff have been working in that area, and we will endeavor, if you don't mind, sir, if we don't have it available right now, we will definitely make it available to you prior to your next meeting.
Well,
Okay, thank you.
may I ask, Mr. Mayor, could you all pick up the phone and make a phone call right now and provide council with that information? I'm sure it should be at somebody's hands.
If Chief Christian is on the line.
Mr. Mayor,
Yes, Councilman Wilson Smith.
while we wait to contact Chief Christian, we did address this issue in one of our council meetings where I requested a report from the police department. Mr. Christian said at that particular meeting that the highest number of shootings, I believe, or crime did come from Petersburg East, but he made a point of saying that it was not the tenants in Petersburg East. It was people visiting from outside of Petersburg coming in. That was data from 1920, from 2020. And we were still meeting at the multimodal center at the time, so it is over 6 months old. But that was the information given at the time.
Okay, so if I may, so people visiting from outside of Petersburg are the cause of all of the commotion
But they
in
didn't
that
say
particular
all.
area.
They didn't say all. They didn't use the word all, but
No, I don't, and I don't mean all as figuratively, but I'm just saying, but they're visiting somebody in an effort to create these incidents that are happening.
Right.
And so the issue comes in, it's not, I don't think even, on the phone, and I know this is a public meeting, I'm sorry you all, but I have to commend Councilman Cuthbert today, because really, he didn't even say anything foul to me today with respect to this project, but I think his concerns was more about safety than low-income tax credits, which we all know he does not like. But basically, he's worried more about the safety than anything else, and I think that is a major concern, for him. So we really need to understand how this is going to pan out, as we start to evolve this city of Petersburg moving forward, because this city has been stagnant too long for us to continue to allow crime and infestation to continue to destroy the city.
Mr. Mayor, we have Chief Christian available for you, sir.
Okay. Yes, Chief Christian.
Garrett will let him in.
Yeah, all right, Garrett, you see Chief Christian? Yes, Chief.
I'm here. I can't.
All right, I can hear you.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay.
And thank you for joining us, Chief. We were just wanting to get the data of our service calls out to that Petersburg East apartment complex over the last year.
Okay. I don't have those exact numbers here handy, but I can get that information. What I will add to that is I do know, I think I reported sometime early on in the early part of the year that in the year 2020, we did see a significant increase in our violent crimes and gun violence as it related to that particular area of the city, Petersburg East. At the early part of this year, the first quarter of this year, we put together a team, myself along with the late Mr. Frank Poland and members of code enforcement. And we went out and spoke to management and made them aware of some of the issues and some of the conditions that we recognized that was causing some of the violence or the people to come to that area, and creating some issues for us that as it related to violence. Security was some of the main concerns, and the upkeep of the property. We went back and made frequent visits. At some point, I think they were cited with some of the violations that had occurred that was happening there on the property. Periodically, we've gone back to check on the property. We've seen some improvements as it relates to the upkeep of the staff, some of the accountability that the management at the time placed on the tenants to be more conscious of their guests. Some of the violent crimes that we experienced were not necessarily tenants, but the visitors of the tenants that were coming on property, coming to visit, or just coming to really congregate and hang out, that had bad blood or beef, as you will, if you will, with other parts of the city, and ultimately ended up in gunfire erupting. So as a result of that, some improvements were made with the facilities of the area, as well as security staff was hired on. And as I said, I don't have the exact numbers, but I do know that we have seen a decrease in our calls for service in that area during the first quarter of this year.
Okay, thank you for the information, Chief. So just wanted to get that information out there to council, because I know this is, like Councilman Cutler raised the question, it is about public safety and eliminating that amount of trauma that those families are being opened up to from being down at that establishment. So so at this time,
Mr. Mayor, if I will,
yes.
I can report back at a later time. I can get those exact numbers on our cost of service so far this year. I can report back to council if that's your desire.
Okay, that's great. Well, look, Councilman Cutler, wouldn't you like to see those numbers as well?
Well, I'd like to see them, but we know we've got a problem. And
Right,
even as a short-term improvement, is it due to the 2 armed guards that are on the premises? You know, we've got 168 low-income units, poverty compacted next to Pin Oaks. How many low-income units do we have in poverty families do we have in Pin Oaks? And you put this concentration of poverty together, and we're really going to expect something different in the future than what we've seen in the past. I wish I were that optimistic, but I don't have any basis for being so. So I think the ultimate problem is of poverty in the name of public safety. And this is an opportunity that name of public, that is not to ratify this proposal.
All right, is that a motion, Councilman Cutler?
Yes, well, I move that we deny the request that's before us.
Okay, motion from Councilman Cuthbert,
I'll second it.
second by
Question.
Councilman Myers. Question, Councilwoman Wilson Smith.
If we deny this request, do the tenants still remain in the apartments?
Mr. Mayor, if you don't mind, I thank you, Ms. Councilwoman. I just text Mr. Tabor, who's on the other end, to offer a point of clarity, because this involved a federal housing project. Even if we deny this, do we have the ability to stop this? And so I think based on the questions that have been raised to Mr.
But that doesn't mean that we have to support it.
Yes, sir, without a doubt, sir. So I was trying to say, as a part of this process, to say to Mr. Tabor to be able to articulate back to the full city council what their options are here. that was, Mr. Tabor, if you had any feedback that would help that at all.
Good afternoon again. I would defer to the property owner with regard to the impact of not receiving approval for the bond financing request.
Hi, this is Brooke Charette. So if this request is denied, we won't be able to do the rehab. The residents will, nothing will really change with the residents' circumstances. They will continue to live in this property. The property is protected by a Section 8 contract for the next 20 years. They just won't get the benefits of the upgrades with all of the construction, security, and all of the things that we discussed.
All right, then Charlie, I just cannot allow folks to live in the conditions in which they're currently living. And I'd ask Charlie, would you reverse your decision, please, so that we can move forward, although we're on the same side this time, Charlie. But we certainly can't leave people living in the condition in which they're living. It's deplorable. It should not have been going on this long. And I have an issue even with the housing authority allowing it to go on this long. And so, Charlie, what do you think?
Well, can I say something after Charlie?
Well, yes, but I'd like for him
Councilor
to.
Myers.
They can just go ahead. I'm sorry.
Right.
I'd like for, yes, sir. I'd like for Charlie to make the decision on his own that he really doesn't want people to live in those kinds of conditions. So I'd like for him to reverse the motion, and I'll support it.
Well,
Councilman Cupber.
I appreciate it, but what we've got is a self-serving representation by an advocate for the property owner who wants this cheap financing. Reminds me a little bit of a 6-year-old who says, if you make me eat my spinach, I'm going to hold my breath until I drop dead. I mean, we can't be held hostage to this kind of thing. Now, if the conditions are deplorable, that's what we have a code enforcement office for. And if they're deplorable, then code needs to get involved, and the owner needs to step up to the plate and do what's necessary to bring the property up to code.
But Charlie, these are new owners. These are not the old owners, and they're willing to put their money in there to develop the property and make it decent for the folks that live there. Think about it again, Charlie, please.
Well, I don't mean
they're not the ones that caused it to be deplorable. They're
No.
just trying to you know what I mean. Come on.
But we can't just, for another 20 years, we're going to have to live with this, and it's going to be refinanced at the end of the 20 years. And
but Charlie, it's a federal mandate. There's nothing we can do to change all of that on there. But at least you'll have a decent place for folks to live. And I listen, I understand your frustration completely, but at least it'll be a decent place for people to live and raise their children, because I'm telling you, it's horrific. And you and I should support, what's better for our citizens here, regardless of these other things that folks want. But if they're gonna throw $60 million or 10 million or however millions of dollars in there to clean this mess up, then maybe it'll help us clean up that whole corridor down there, which, as far as I'm concerned, is the worst gateway in the city of Petersburg. But to have something new and fantastic on the other side of it might help us to clean up that entire corridor coming on down. So think about it, Charlie, please.
Well, I'm not hard-hearted. I mean, I truly am not, but I do take a long view on things. And, that is the long-term consequences of well-intentioned decisions. And the long-term consequence of a well-intentioned decision of approving this proposed bond financing is going to be more of the same. Now, I don't want anybody having to live in substandard quarters. And I think there are two solutions to that that leave City Council out of being an enabler and do not make us an enabler. And one solution is that the people move other places. And you can pick up the newspaper and see affordable housing all over the area springing up, especially in Richmond, a good bit in Petersburg. But we've got to quit concentrating poverty. And that's part of the problem here is the geography of this thing is not going to change. We've got 168 units right next to Pin Oaks. And I don't know how many units, I don't know how many units there are in Pin Oaks, but lots.
And I couldn't agree. I couldn't agree with you more, Charlie. The concentration is the worst thing in the world, but that's all that we have, Charlie. And people need to have decent, affordable housing to live in. And so if we have someone who's coming in here to take what we have in a dilapidated state, and I'm telling you, Charlie, you and I can ride over there this afternoon, and I tell you, I don't even want to pull my car up in there, okay? It's horrific. And it makes no sense to me that people have to live like that. And they have to live like that. And even you got your housing authority who's now at some point making preparations to do better for the folks that live there, but they should not have had to live there last year, this year, today, and 5 and 10 years ago. I understand what you're trying to say, Charlie, but we have to make a difference for those who are there now. And you and I, 20 years from now will be, I don't know, I'm not gonna stay on council that long, but let someone else fight that fight, Charlie. And let's provide decent, affordable housing for these folks, for the argument of these folks right now. And then we'll battle this another day. Is that okay with you?
All right, look.
And if you want, I will pull my second so that we can formulate another vote, Charlie, if that's okay.
Well, I really appreciate the conversation. It's the best conversation that I've been involved in since I've been on city council. And it's difficult. It's wide open in the public. And it's hard to express one's thoughts kind of extemporaneously, and we're both doing our best to do that. But I do think that the people that find themselves in this unfortunate place to live have other options. And one is to move elsewhere, and the other is, this is not their option, this is our option, for code, our Petersburg City Code to come down hard on the property owner and get these properties up to code. But the ultimate problem is the geographic location. We've got the compaction of poverty, and we've got to put an end to that as best we can. And I can see how the property owner could just close the property project down if code enforcement makes it too expensive to continue to do business there. And I want to facilitate the moving of these current residents to safer places where we are not dealing with the compaction of poverty that we have allowed to be created here. And the Petersburg Redevelopment and Housing Authority is made worse by continuing its poverty right next door. So I think we've got to do our best to change the status quo. And the only way I know to do our best to change the status quo is to vote no on this, the agenda item. That is to vote in favor of the motion that's on the floor.
All right, look, Councilman Myers, Councilman Cuthbert, I got Vice Mayor Smith-Lee and Councilwoman Wilson-Smith would like to chime in on that. First, Vice Mayor Smith-Lee, then Councilwoman.
hopefully I'm saying this right. So Crotons is where they want to redo everything. So the people will have something decent to live in. You know for yourself, if you have something nice, you're going to take care of it. And poverty is going to never go away if it's not equal, or if people don't have jobs or knowledge of things. Everybody is not don't have the same opportunities as may I have, or you, Mayor, or you, Darren, or you, Tresca, or you, Charlie, or you, Howard. Everybody don't have those same opportunities. So we cannot always forget about what is here. There is no difference, Charlie. The units, they want to just make sure that these people have a decent place to live. Everybody wants a decent place to live. And like you said they need to go somewhere. Where are they going? Where are they gonna go? We just gonna what? Just knock it down, and then they end up living in hotels or on the street or be homeless? Where are they gonna go? We got to come up with some type of solution. We got to help people. I'm finished, Mayor.
All right, Councilman Wilson Smith.
Thank you. Back to what I was originally saying when I had the floor. If you can recall, at several council meetings, we have discussed the rebuilding of Pin Oaks, rebuilding of Pecan Acres. I have given the idea of doing away with the concentrated poverty concept to all of us. I asked the money that the Housing Authority did receive, could we look into using that money to purchase the old and or dilapidated houses in this city in various neighborhoods and have people move out one family at a time into these houses as we fix them up. Instead of fixing up Pin Oaks or Pecan Acres, we would fix up various houses in the neighborhoods, and families could move into the various neighborhoods. No one has to be labeled as poor or unable to afford. So far, out of all my years of trying to get that done, that's not been done. And we are where we are as a result of not wanting to do something different. Now, Croatan, as we call it, or Petersburg East, is not in good shape right now. There is poverty among us. And the more impoverished we are, the more you can expect crime. But when we can lift impoverished people up a little bit at a time, then your crime becomes less. Yeah, they're still in the same neighborhood, but we didn't want to do anything any differently. So therefore, we're still got them in the same neighborhoods. Do we leave people in an impoverished looking position, or do we assist them in pulling themselves up? And I say we assist them. We try to say to them, okay, so what if you're poor? So what if it's like this? We're gonna help you improve your status until we can come up with a different program, something different to help you. Right now, this is all we had. If we say no to this, these people are left exactly where they are with exactly what they had. Now we have rental policies we have had or should have a rental policy in this city that I ask about every year. If our rental policy is up to par as it should be, it covers Ward 1. That means code compliance could have been going in there the entire time, not just there, but other places within the ward. And if that's happening, then the situations that we see wouldn't be happening. I think we have to answer yes to doing this. To not do this puts us in worse shape, and it puts the residents in worse shape than they are now. And that's all I have to say about it.
All right. We have a motion from Councilman Cuthbert, a second from Councilman Myers. Councilman Wilson Smith, did you have a substitute motion?
My substitute motion, if I may, would be to disregard the first motion and to support the recommendation to adopt the attached resolution.
I'm gonna second that.
All right, question, Councilman Cuthbert?
That's the easy part. The hard part is figuring out how to change. The word of the 21st century, I think, is trajectory. The hard part is figuring out how to change the trajectory of poverty in Petersburg. And I think it's almost as easy to ask that question as it is going to be to vote yes on this motion. The tough part is answering the question, and I don't have that answer.
But Charlie, I still believe that your answers can probably be found, because as I listened to Councilwoman Wilson Smith talk about what she wanted to do, we have all supported first-time home buyers and affordable housing. And first-time home buyers is a program that can be done through the Redevelopment and Housing Authority. And they can take your monies and help you to move out of impoverished situations and to pay your mortgage. And so basically, the issue is the housing authority doing all that they need to do to move people out of impoverished situations. Let's not blame the council or what we would or should have done. They are the authority to do so. So with that said, I'm gonna be quiet so we can move forward with this motion so that we can move on to the next task. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Well, right. Mr. Mayor, I'm going to vote yes for this motion.
Thanks, Charlie.
And I appreciate the olive branch that Councilman Myers has extended to me in this conversation. And I think our discussion helps to sharpen the sensitivity of all members of this city council to figuring out how to quit doing the same thing over and over again and expecting a different result. And it's going to be a long-term effort, but we will have to do it and try to be consistent through changes in city council from one really decade to another. But maybe this council can start us on the path at some future meeting. In any event, I'm ready for the vote. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
All right, at this time, Madam Clerk, would you please call the roll?
Councilmember Cuthbert.
Aye.
Councilmember Wilson Smith.
Aye.
Councilmember Myers.
Aye.
Councilmember Hart.
Please say it again.
Aye.
Okay, thank you. Councilmember Hill.
Aye.
Vice Mayor Smith Lee.
Aye.
Mayor Perm.
No.
Motion's passed.
Next item, I need to go back to item 13C, which was, I missed one, which was a consideration of appropriation for a federal grant 2019, 2014 for transit operating budget in the amount of $186,023. The recommended city council approved a tax appropriation of $186,023.
So moved.
Second.
I already have a motion to second. Madam Clerk, could you please call the roll?
Councilmember Cuthbert,
Aye.
Councilmember Wilson Smith,
Aye.
Councilmember Myers,
Aye.
Councilmember Hart,
Aye.
Councilmember Hill,
Aye.
Vice Mayor Smith Lee,
Aye.
Mayor Perm.
Aye.
Motion's passed.
Next, we have G is a request to adopt a resolution granting bond secures Southside Medical Center and Virginia Commonwealth University, the MedTrans, to establish a base of operations in the city of Petersburg.
So moved.
Okay,
Second.
we have a motion, we have a second. All right. Madam Clerk, could you please call the roll?
Councilmember Cuthbert,
Aye.
Councilmember Wilson Smith,
Aye.
Councilmember Myers,
Aye.
Councilmember Hart. Thank you. Councilmember Hill,
Aye.
Vice Mayor Smith Lee,
Aye.
Mayor Perm.
Aye.
Motion's passed.
Next, we move on to item 13H, which is consideration of appointments to the Petersburg redevelopment.
Mr. Mayor, I'd like to appoint
Yes, Councilman
Diane
Hill.
Johnson of 2000 Coastal Street in Ward.
Second.
A motion, a second by Councilman Myers. Any discussion, Councilman Wilson Smith?
Same thing. I don't have either application in front of me. And I'm sure Ms. Jackson sent it to us, so that's not on her. I have either one in front of me, so can somebody tell me the response to Ms. Johnson?
In my opinion, as the education, she's a member of Ward 2. I want her on there, and that's one of the requirements or one of the abilities of council. I'm not going to go back and forth with why, but she's qualified, in my opinion. If you have someone else up there, then I will ask that you will put that name up, and then we just vote them up or vote them down. So that's basically what it is. I don't have anything to add or anything to take away from it.
I don't understand why it is that I simply ask the question. I have to know why I'm voting for the person. That's all. It's as simple as that. Saying that she's a member of Ward 2. We already have 2 people on this list who are from Ward 2 and who are on the Housing Authority. There's nobody on the Housing Authority from Ward 1 or Ward 6. Now, no one has applied from 1, so there's nothing to be said about that. One person has applied from 6. If we are looking at this, like we looked at the first one, and we don't want to overcrowd an authority with people from the same ward, then why would we put a 3rd person from Ward 2 on here as opposed to the only person from Ward 6 who has applied? I simply am trying to understand.
I understand, but if you want to put the other gentleman's name up, you can, and we can vote on it.
I already know what I can do. I know I can put his name up. I know I can make a nomination. What I am asking is, what is it that we're going by when we make our votes?
Okay. I put up a name, and I feel that the person is qualified. So that's the reason why I put it up. So I'm just asking the council support.
Okay, then I'd like to also nominate Mr. Patrick Ingram from Ward 6.
Okay.
Who also.
Yeah, but you got a motion on the floor.
All right. Then we can't nominate 2 people at the same time.
So you can't. So really, proper protocol is really you don't need a second. All you need is a nominee. So when you're nominating people, you just nominate. We typically just do a second, but we can nominate. You don't need a second, so she can nominate him, and then I nominate my individual. So, Mr. Mayor, I'll ask that you take the vote for Ms. Diane Johnson first, and then you can take the vote for Mr. Patrick Ingram afterwards, being that I was on the floor first. You're muted, Mr. Mayor.
All right. Ms. Jackson. Hello, Ms. Jackson, can you hear me?
Oh, I'm sorry. Yes, I was muted. Sorry. Councilman Cuthbert.
Let me make sure I've got the motion straight. This is the motion to appoint Diane Johnson to the Petersburg Redevelopment and Housing Authority. Is that correct?
Yes.
Aye.
Thank you. Councilmember Wilson Smith.
No.
Councilmember.
Say it again.
Aye.
Thank you. Councilmember Hill.
Abstain.
Vice Mayor Smith-Lee.
Aye.
Mayor Pern.
Thank
Motion's passed. You're welcome.
Next, we need to go back to item 13D is what they claim we missed. And that was the appropriation for $256,000. Second reading for the federal grant.
So moved.
Okay.
All right, Madam Clerk, would you please call the roll?
Councilmember Cuthbert.
Aye.
Councilmember Wilson Smith.
Aye.
Councilmember Myers.
Aye.
Councilmember Hart.
She said aye.
Thank you. Councilmember Hill.
Aye.
Vice Mayor Smith-Lee.
Aye.
Mayor Pern.
Aye.
Motion's passed.
Next, we move to item 14, City Manager's Report. Mr. Miller, any items?
Mr. Mayor, I just have two things real quick. You read my report. Two additional things. I'd like Mrs. Stacy Jordan to respond to Mr. Councilmember Hill's question with respect to building and collections. And I also like that to be followed up by Mrs. Tice giving a very brief report on our COVID updates. Could you unmute Mrs. Jordan, please?
Good afternoon, everyone. Can everybody hear me?
Yes, Stacy, thank you.
In regards to Councilman Hill's question about the incorrect order billing, so the largest issue that we are having is in reference to the lockbox. So as Dropbox payments are being dropped off at the Dropbox and billing and collections, they're being forwarded to the lockbox within North Carolina, which delays the payment process. So instead, if somebody drops it off on a Monday, they don't send it in until Friday, you're looking still at another week, 2 weeks to complete the process. So what we need to do is we're going to restructure the department so that we can address the foot traffic, the Dropbox, collections, email, and phones, which we're trying to do now. The only thing that we should be using the lockbox for should be for the mortgage companies and people who pay their bills through the bill pay. But I hope that addresses your concerns, Councilman.
Thank you.
So we now going to North Carolina? Sorry, Mr. Hill.
That's right.
First it was Maryland, wasn't it?
Maryland.
Yes, sir.
Now we in North Carolina?
Yes, sir. With the
Lord
transition of
have
the new
mercy.
bank,
Yeah.
yes, when we switched from SunTrust to Atlantic, yes, sir. We moved to North Carolina.
Oh, okay, I'm sorry.
That's all right.
So may I ask, and Mr. Hill, I know this is a question, but can I ask a question?
Councilman Myers.
So when you go to the bank and they run a check through a machine and it makes a deposit into the correct account, why is it that our tellers don't have that same form of system downstairs that they can go ahead and process the people's checks as they come in?
They do. I'm sorry.
Okay, all right, I got you. Go ahead, I'm sorry.
No, I was gonna say with the new bank, do have that now.
Okay.
It's just we have to develop a structure within the Department of Billing and Collections. It just has to be restructured at this point. Because it's been, turnover rate is just absolutely a strong. We have to structure this department so that we're able to assist the residents, council, and everybody within the city of Petersburg. You just can't continue to just bag up everything and push it on through North Carolina. We have to process these payments in-house moving forward. And that's going to alleviate the issue with people receiving incorrect bills. As the bills are being printed out, we're not making sure these payments are posted prior to the bills being put out. If all of the payments are posted to everyone's accounts through lockbox, via return check process, tax, everything, if everything is posted the way it's supposed to be, when that bill is printed, you should not see a previous out or delinquent tax.
What can council do to assist in the process? Because I think probably the issue is, I guess I'm sure it's the lockbox thing, but it's just the volume of payments that come in at
yes,
one
sir.
time?
That's truly what it is. We do get a large volume of payments coming through. Absolutely.
Now, and Mr. Mayor, if you don't mind, if you recall, we used to do this every other month. Do you think that we need to reverse this back to every other month rather than once a month, so that it would reduce the bulk of payments coming in, so that the processes can be met by the employees? I mean, what are your thoughts on that?
No, I don't think so. Mr. Miller?
Okay.
No, Mr. Mayor, Mr. Myers, Mrs. Jordan is expressing is that she's working with a new staff. I think we have to give the staff an opportunity to learn. She is really, I have to compliment her on this. She's a true teacher, and she is working with the new staff, a short staff. We're hiring folks now to replace those that have left. We have to give her an opportunity to grow in that position and to learn, not at the expense of our residents, but for the overall benefit of our residents. So I think if we revisit this in about 2 months, I think that would be a good time, maybe, Mr. Myers, to ask that question. I think it's a bit early since she's just been thrust into that role.
Okay.
Thank you. And, Mr. Mayor, if I could bring Mrs. Tice, I'm sorry, forgive me.
Right, Councilman Hill.
Answer your question, sir.
Right, Councilman Hill, the question.
Thank you, Ms. Jordan. I appreciate your input on that. So basically, whenever someone drops off something in the drop box, we're still sending it somewhere else. But right now, are you saying that that we do have the capability to, I guess, input the data in Petersburg or at the office?
Yes, sir, Councilman Hill. Once we backfill the positions that are still open, we will be able to process the payments in-house.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. I appreciate it. And try to keep us up to date on that. I guess the city managers say maybe give you about 2 months. So, you know, if anything come up, because all of us been getting calls just here recently about the same thing. But thank you, and thank you.
You're very welcome. And if any council member has an issue or their resident has an issue, please let them know to reach out to me at any time.
Thank you. Thank you. Another question, Councilman Cuthbert.
Mr. Mayor, I want to use this as an opportunity to pat ourselves on our collective heads for reanimating the city collector position. We would not be having this conversation if we had not done so. And the reason we would not be having this conversation is that the solution would be beyond our grasp. So we did the right thing. That doesn't mean we've solved the problems, but it does mean that we have the means to solve the problems. And so we all recognize the importance of this. And thanks to the fact that we've got a city collector who reports to city council, we are going to solve this problem. So thank you, Mr. Mayor and Council, for letting me get on my soapbox. But I think it's really important that we keep in mind why, the progress that we have made, the strides that we have made, the opportunities that lie before us, and those opportunities are now within council's control to achieve and pursue. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you.
Mr. Mayor, thank you. If I can have Ms. Tyus, please report out on the COVID progress and updates. Ms. Tyus, please.
Good afternoon, Mr. Mayor, City Council, City Manager, and community. Once again, I come before you to give you an update on COVID. And Gary, we only need to do the PowerPoint. The information on the one pager that Gary just put up is the same as the information that you will find in the PowerPoint. So just to get quickly to it, Petersburg is now at a caseload of 3,703. We are not escalating any faster than any other part of the jurisdiction. Our death toll is now at 81. I think when we were last before you, we were at 77. We look like we're trending, and I think there's an effort going on now to kind of create some numbers that might show you what the actual trends are, but that's where we stand at this point. Our testing on the next slide stands the same as it was at last we met. We have not had a escalation in the request or need for testing, so we're still testing at Pathways, and you can always call into the health department's number at 804-862-8989 if you know anybody who is in need of testing, or they can go to Pathways on Wednesdays after 3 p.m. And don't forget that they're all most health providers are also providing testing as well. We are excited, and let me on the front of this, let me take this opportunity to thank Council Member Annette Smith-Lee for her introduction. Councilmember Smith-Lee introduced us to a member of the governor's office who is responsible, who is very involved in the Vaccinate Virginia concept. They met with us one day a couple of weeks ago and decided to sit in on one of our team meetings where we're talking about COVID that we have every other week. They were so impressed with the coordination that happens with that team and how many members of various components of our community that participated in that they agreed to allow Petersburg to be a test site for the VSU vaccination bus. So you saw it on the news that they went to American Inn. We vaccinated about 50 residents at that site. The purpose of that was to begin to figure out how to address our homeless population and our hardest to serve population, which is why they developed the mobile units. We had a second mobile event at Bethany Hospital where we serviced the 4 hotels that sit in the vicinity of Witt and Crater. That was a very successful event also where we served about 70. The difference between the mobile unit and other vaccination opportunities that we have is that all of the residents that we serve at the mobile unit are able to be registered on site. So pre-registration is not required as the mobile unit moves with us. But at the mobile units, because we're serving a more transient population, it was beneficial that we were using the J&J vaccination because it was one shot and we didn't have to follow up. We had, they were being extremely supportive of Petersburg in that we had 3 other sites scheduled for the mobile unit and they're working their way through the list we gave them. But the last 3 are on hold until there's approval to go back to using J&J. So we stand ready as soon as it is safe to do so to go back to the mobile unit. But please note that the Crater Health District is still distributing Pfizer and Moderna. It just took the J&J off due to the mobile component of it. Next slide. For community outreach and engagement, the call center is still taking calls to get everybody on the wait list, because for the duration of this, it's going to be important, unless we're using the mobile unit, that you're on the state's wait list. Thank you, Council Member Wilson Smith, for your connect. Because of the connection between the, Council Member Wilson Smith, she introduced us to someone from Walmart. So Walmart on Crater Road allowed our call center staff to go out and interact. They interacted in one day with 305 residents. We were happy to find that 195 of them had already been vaccinated. This is self-reporting. And about 89 indicated that they had no inclination to be vaccinated. And then we were able to put 21 residents on the wait list. Great fact on the next slide, and I'll wrap up. We continue to make sure that we get as many resources in Petersburg as we can. Right now, to date, Petersburg has vaccinated 6,317 of our residents. Completely vaccinated, meaning if it was 2, they got the 2, or with the J&J. When we started this process of vaccinations, Petersburg was at the bottom of the vaccination list. Not that we are happy that any of our other colleagues in the Crater District are falling behind, but we're now no longer at the bottom of the list. There are 2 jurisdictions who are not being vaccinated at a higher rate as Petersburg. So we'll continue to fight to collaborate and work with people to make sure that Petersburg continues to get served as best we can. The next vaccination event is going to be held on April the 23rd. It's going to be held in Hopewell, but it's going to be promoted as an event to service Petersburg residents as well as Prince George's. And that concludes my update.
Thank you, Ms. Tyus. Any questions for Ms. Tyus on the report? Vice Mayor Smith-Lee?
Yes, I am very want to know, how can we get people who are homebound to get vaccinated, especially those elderly people who are not mobile?
Yeah. A premature flyer went out somewhere that suggested that we were able to do that. They're working on that as we speak, and they're working on the process for how you sign people up to do that. That is the conversation that is actually ensuing right now. And as soon as they work that out, I have, based on input from others, we have about 3 people that we'll make sure are at the top of that list, but they're working that out as we speak.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Tyus. Appreciate it. All right, any other items from the city manager's report?
No, sir.
Okay, all right. Thank you. Next, we move on to item 15, business reports from the clerk. Ms. Jackson, any items?
I have no items.
I think it is time, Ms. Jackson. I think we need to let everybody know about May 4th, right?
Yes, about moving the council meeting to May 3rd. I think that Monday, because on May 4th, we have the grand opening event at AMPAC. That's going to be the same time as our regular council meeting.
Okay.
And if possible, can I get maybe a vote or consensus on everyone with moving the date to either the prior date, May 3rd, that Monday?
So moved.
Second.
All right, this is a motion to move the meeting to Monday. Okay.
Yes.
All right. Madam Clerk, could you call the roll?
Councilmember Cuthbert.
Aye.
Councilmember Wilson Smith.
Aye.
Councilmember Myers. Councilmember Hart. Is he still on?
Vicky left.
He's gone. He's gone. Okay, thank you. Councilmember Hill,
Aye.
Vice Mayor Smith Lee,
Aye.
Mayor Perm.
Aye.
Motion's passed, and I will make sure to make those changes onto the agenda from the 4th to the 3rd.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Next, business of reports from the city attorney, Mr. Williams.
No report, Mr. Mayor.
All right, next is,
Question for the city attorney. Can I
yes,
ask-
Councilwoman Wilson Smith.
I'd like to ask a question of the city attorney, please. The first question has to do with, when are we going to discuss the redistricting? Can you come back to us with, because I thought it was in April, or something should be done by April the 30th. I remember I asked about this once before, so I'm asking again, if you could come back to us with information on when we entertain redistricting.
I can tell you now. First, my office doesn't do redistricting. That's something that would be done through planning, but the planning department would need to receive information from the 2020 census, which has been substantially delayed. The report has been substantially delayed as a result of COVID. And so they need to receive that information in order to process the redistricting. I can send you the articles that have come out on that issue, but that's what the holdup is. Ordinarily, it would come out the beginning of April. That's when they're supposed to do it, the April following the 2020 census data. But the COVID has caused an issue with that.
So, and when planning brings whatever they bring to us, council would make some decisions and vote on it, right?
Right. What they'll do is they should get a program that is available through I can't remember what the entity is, but it's a program that they loan to localities, and they'll use it to model several different scenarios, saying based on this census data, here are 3 or 4 different options that council could consider in redistricting, and then council will vote on those options. Council can even, using that software, move the lines a little bit and see where the adjustments are made and how that impacts the populace in those particular districts. But we did that when I was in Winchester, and that's how it was presented. It's presented in a graphic format.
Okay, my next question to you is, would council have the authority to, or be the body which would speak on the operation downtown, the town square operation? If we used COVID money through the CARES Act for that operation, then does that mean that council makes the deciding decision about keeping it or not?
Are you talking about, I'm not sure what you're talking about.
I'm talking about the square downtown, the street that's been cut off, where we have the tables and chairs. If there's a decision to be made about that, whether or not we keep it open or close it, would that decision be made by council?
Right. My recommendation was to not have opened it in the fashion that it was open, because there's a state code provision that pertains to the closing of rights of way, and having it closed in the manner it is, I think exposes potential liability. So yes, I don't think it was open through council, and it should have been. And I think council should probably vote to close it at some point when council is prepared, because my recommendation was not to have created it in the manner that it was.
So then the final decision should be made by council is the question that I'm trying to figure out.
Yes, it should have been done through council to begin with. I don't believe it was, but yes, closing of streets, there's a specific process that's followed, and it would have involved city council.
Okay, thank you. Mayor Perm, I have one other question, but it doesn't go to the city attorney, so I guess I wait till the city attorney part over with.
All right.
And I have no report.
The next item is adjournment.
Oh, well, I don't want to do it before adjournment though.
Okay,
And maybe it can go to the city attorney, because we just had a vote about the committee, and there were two names being presented. I just lost my paper, but according to our yellow sheet, there were 2 vacancies, and we voted on 1. According to the information that we were given, there were 2 vacancies. We voted on 1. And should we have voted on both vacancies, or?
I don't get a yellow sheet, so I'm not familiar with what you're talking about. I think council fills the vacancies at its discretion. If you had it on the agenda and there was a vacancy, then council can or can decide not to fill it.
And that's what I'm trying to find out. According to the yellow sheet, there are 2 vacancies, and there were 2 names to be voted on. Should we have voted on both names or not?
I don't know what the yellow sheet is. I have never seen that. I don't know what you're talking about.
Okay, I guess Ms. Jackson can answer it.
I can speak to it. So that would be up to you guys whether you would take somebody. There was a term that expired, which was Mr. Dickens, that expired in 2018, and then there was a vacant seat. And there are 2 members who did apply, so it would have been up to council on whether or not you would want to fill those 2 seats with those 2 applicants or 1. So it was at the discretion of council. That was up to you.
Okay, when we voted, I thought we were voting to fill 1 position. I did not realize that we were voting to fill both positions.
Okay.
So I don't know if everybody's understanding was as mine was, but I would really like for us to go back and take a vote to fill the 2nd position as well. Is that permissible, Mr. Mayor?
That seat was, Mr. Dickens' seat was from Ward 3. So I'm just letting you know that I know I haven't talked to Mr. Dickens to find out whether he didn't want to serve anymore. So he's been a mainstay of that board, and it's I'm not going to support replacing his seat, being that they have a lot of development going on in the housing authority with redoing the Pin Oaks and Pecan Acres. I'm not going to replace him with someone with no institutional knowledge. So I just want you to know, if you want to take a vote, we can, but I'm gonna vote no.
Okay, it was not, was simply going by what the facts stated. The facts stated that his term would expire. And based on that, and based on the information that we were given, we had 2 applications and we voted on 1. So I'm making a motion that we accept the other application from Mr. Patrick Ingram to be on the board, Redevelopment and Housing Authority Board.
Yeah, but Mr. Mayor, did Mr. Dickens resign?
No, he did not.
Then how are we going to replace him when we haven't given him
the opportunity,
the courtesy?
Exactly.
Didn't Mr. Dickens submit a letter to all of us supporting Mr. Ingram for a position? Did he not?
That's not a letter of resignation.
I can say that on the usual, whenever someone's term does expire, there are letters sent out from myself, from my office, just letting that person know that their term has expired. And if they wish to continue on the board, to submit a letter stating that they would like to remain on the board, and also submitting a new application as a new applicant as well. I just wanted to throw that out there.
And you have not received that, am I correct?
All right, Councilman Wilson Smith. Do you still want to put that motion on the floor?
I do, for the record.
Okay, yes. Motion's on the floor to replace Mr. Dickens with Mr. Patrick Ingram. There's a motion. Hearing no second, the lack of a second, the motion dies. We move on to item 17, adjournment.
So moved.
So moved. Second.
Second.
Thank you all.
Thanks.